You know, sometimes in the quietest hours, when the city is asleep but your thoughts are still awake, I catch myself feeling something strange. It's not pain, not sadness, not even anxiety. It's more like a muted longing for something unspoken, for a life that could have been but never began. And then I ask myself, why am I so tired? Why is everything fine, yet I feel empty inside? Why do I do everything right and still feel like I don't belong? One night, as I was rereading Carl Jung, not as a scholar, but as a human being who seemed to understand what I'm only beginning to see, I stumbled upon a thought that echoed through my heart. Many neurotics suffer not because they are broken, but because they are too normal. A paradox, isn't it? Since childhood, we've been told be like everyone else, don't stand out, do what's expected. We're trained to be convenient, predictable, safe, but what if this very normality is the cage in which our soul suffocates? The making of normal. And what even is normal? Who decided what that means? Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine you're a little girl or a little boy. You laugh loudly, you dance even when there's no music. You draw the sun in purple because that's how it feels to you. You ask strange questions. Why don't clouds fall? What if I don't want to grow up and at some point someone says, don't do that, don't say that? You're standing out. Stop it, so you stop. Not all at once, but little by little, like a leaf that slowly falls to the ground. You learn to hold back your laughter, to speak politely, to want what you're supposed to want, to fear what everyone fears. School teaches you to think in templates. The media teaches you to feel on schedule. Advertising teaches you to desire the same things: a car, an apartment, a perfect body, a perfect life. Social media turns every deviation from the norm into a reason for shame. Look how she's dressed. He's still single? What's wrong with him? Why aren't you married by 30? Why don't you have a job? Why do you work too much? Everywhere, must, should, have to. And almost no one asks, what do you truly need? So, year after year, decade after decade, you build a life that looks right. You start a relationship because it's time. You choose a career because it's stable. You smile in photos even when inside it's all ashes. And everything seems fine. But then, why do you wake up at night with a lump in your throat? Why is it getting harder to feel joy? Why do you sense that you're living someone else's life? Neurosis, not a disease, but a cry of the soul. Carl Jung, in his quiet wisdom, would have said, you are not ill, you have simply forgotten yourself. He called neurosis the agony of the human soul, not weakness, not sin, but the suffering of a being that can no longer grow. Because neurosis is not just nerves, it is a deep chronic state rooted in fear, the fear of life itself, the fear of being yourself, the fear of making mistakes, the fear of not fitting in, the fear of being rejected. And that fear breeds anxiety, constant, formless, sitting heavy in the chest like a stone. It keeps you awake at night. It turns an ordinary day into a quiet torment. Often, neurosis comes wrapped in other disguises: depression, guilt for not being good enough, phobias, fear of open spaces, of crowds, of loneliness, obsessive thoughts spinning like a broken record, irritability spilling onto loved ones, insomnia, the haunting sense that you're out of place. But the most frightening part is not the symptoms. It's that neurosis slowly drains the life out of you. It shrinks your world, first to a room, then to a couch, then to the prison of your own thoughts. It steals your courage to try new things. It pushes you away from people, from emotions, from life itself. It fills you with guilt for merely existing instead of truly living. And then you begin to think, I'm broken. Something's wrong with me, but Jung would say otherwise. You are not broken. You have simply turned away from your path. How a neurosis is born young, believed neurosis never appears out of nowhere. It unfolds in three quiet steps. Step 1. At some point, life presents you with a task, not a practical problem, but an inner call to grow. It could be confessing love, leaving a job that's killing your spirit, speaking with a parent you feared your whole life, deciding to create something even if no one understands, choosing to be alone, if that feels true, or allowing yourself to be vulnerable. It's not trouble, it's a summons. Your inner voice whispers, it's time. Time to act, to grow, to become more than you are. Step 2, you turn away. Not because you're bad or lazy, but because you're afraid. Afraid of pain, of failure, of judgment, afraid you won't make it. So you choose the safe path. You stay silent instead of speaking. You stay instead of living. You pretend instead of being. Step 3, the most dangerous one. You push that inner task out of awareness. You tell yourself, it doesn't matter. I'll deal with it later. I don't need this. You fill the emptiness with distractions, shows, food, work, relationships, social media, alcohol, endless noise, anything but feeling. But what's suppressed never disappears. It sinks into the unconscious, and from there it poisons you through anxiety, through dreams, through strange symptoms of the body. Jung once wrote about a patient. By repressing her unpleasant thoughts, she created a kind of psychic vacuum. And as often happens, that vacuum slowly filled with anxiety. Had she consciously worried about her thoughts, she would have known what she was missing. Then she would not have needed anxiety as a substitute for the absence of conscious suffering. And that is the paradox. Conscious suffering heals, unconscious suffering destroys. When you allow yourself to feel pain, it moves through you. When you hide it, it becomes your shadow. Why there are so many neurotics today? Jung lived in the early 20th century, and yet his words ring even truer today, because the modern world has become a factory of conformity. Most people spend their lives adjusting, fitting in, blending into the crowd, afraid to stand out, afraid to simply be. First, fear is inherited. Many of us were raised in families where emotions were silenced, mistakes were punished, success mattered more than sincerity. We learned early it's better to be good than to be real. And now, as adults, we repeat that same pattern with ourselves and sometimes with our own children. Jung once wrote, the psychological disorders of children are usually connected with the psychology of their parents. It is better to examine the parents' attitudes, for the child's psyche would function properly on its own if it weren't disturbed by harmful influences. Second, many young adults today can't find their inner compass. Physically, they are grown. Emotionally, they're still waiting for permission to live. They seek approval, guidance, a sign that they're doing it right. We live in a world where adulthood is defined not by maturity, but by possessions, a mortgage, a car, a marriage, children. Yet deep inside, so many still whisper, tell me, am I living correctly? And until we learn to listen to our own voice, we'll remain lost, even when we seem to have everything. Third, our culture rewards passivity. Technology gives the illusion of connection while stealing true closeness. We eat poorly, sleep little, move less. We are drained, yet we call it normal because everyone lives like this. And finally, morality has lost its anchor in courage. Once, the highest virtues were bravery, honesty, resilience. Now, the convenience, popularity, and surface success. But to be yourself, to truly unapologetically be, requires moral strength. And that's something no app, no brand, no social algorithm can give you. Two paths to neurosis, two paths to healing. Jung once said there are two roads that lead to neurosis, and the cure for each is different. 1. The path of under adaptation. This is when a person cannot meet the basic demands of life. They struggle to form relationships. They can't find meaningful work. They fail to build a social image, a persona that allows them to interact with the world. Such a person needs to learn what it means to live in the world, to connect, to take responsibility, to stand on their own feet. Jung wrote, because of his illness, the patient has lived partly or wholly outside of life. He has neglected many of his duties, both social and human. He must return to those duties if he wishes to be well again. This is the path outward, the path of integration, learning to be part of the collective without losing the self. 2. The path of over adaptation. And here lies the subtler tragedy. Those who appear to have everything. They have a family, a home, a career, respect, perhaps even admiration. Their lives look perfect from the outside, and yet inside there is silence because they have adapted too well. They have become so normal that they've lost themselves entirely. They've silenced their individuality in exchange for approval. They've abandoned their strange dreams, their unique vision, their inner calling, all to be like everyone else. And now their soul aches because individuality is as vital as air. Jung wrote, there are countless people for whom the development of individuality is an absolute necessity, especially in an age crushed by collective norms. Their suffering does not come from the outer world, but from within. They fear their own uniqueness. They no longer hear the voice of the soul, and so their healing will not come from fitting in more tightly, but from returning to who they truly are. Returning to yourself, gently healing is not a battle. It is not destruction, not revolution. Healing is trust. It is the quiet act of turning toward yourself. You don't have to tear your life apart to begin a new one. You can simply begin to notice. Notice when you say yes, but your heart whispers no. Notice when you smile while something inside you aches. Notice when you choose to blend in just so you won't be alone. And little by little, you begin to reclaim the right to be, the right to feel what you feel, the right to want what you want, the right to live the way your soul is calling you to live, even if it doesn't look like anyone else's life. Jung wrote, the neurotic must truly choose the individual path he recognizes as his own and keep to it until the unmistakable reaction of his own unconscious tells him he is on the wrong road. In other words, trust yourself, even when the world says no. Even when your mind doubts, your soul knows the way, and it doesn't require grand gestures. Sometimes healing begins with the smallest steps, saying no where you once stayed silent, wearing what feels like you, not what's appropriate, spending an evening in quiet instead of company, writing, painting, singing, simply because you want to. This is not rebellion. This is coming home to yourself. Risk is simply a step into the unknown. Every true transformation begins with a risk, not the kind that shouts, but the quiet kind, the one that whispers, trust. Step forward. You won't see the whole path, only the next stone. We often wait for certainty. We want the map, the plan, the guarantee that it will all work out. But the soul doesn't speak in guarantees. It speaks in symbols, feelings, and quiet pulls of intuition. And so, the first step will always feel like a fall. It's supposed to, because you are leaving the old self behind, the one built from other people's expectations. Jung wrote, the way is not straight, it's a spiral. You come back again and again to the same point, but each time on a higher level. That's what healing truly is. Not a straight line upward, but a spiral homeward. Each time you return to a familiar pain, you meet it with more understanding, more softness, more light. There is no final arrival. There is only deepening. And each risk, each honest choice, each act of courage to be who you are is a sacred step on that spiral. So, when the fear comes, and it will, remember, fear is not a sign you're lost. It's a sign you're entering new territory, the place your soul has been waiting for. You are not late. You are not behind. You are simply becoming real. And the moment you dare to live, not as who you should be, but as who you are, you step into your true life, the life that has been waiting for you since the very beginning. Mindfulness path, with love and faith in you.